Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by husky, hairy, huggable homos who love film to dish up some movie news at times. Although, again, this week, does it count as movie news? I guess it kind of does.
This week counts. This is the hot off the presses stuff, kind of, sorta.
Yeah, I think it counts too. So we've got some movie news-ish stuff coming your way, but we also love to review films, and we are going to be talking about the new remake of The Jungle Book by John Favreau. So very much looking forward to that discussion. But before we dive any of that, let me introduce you to my delightful co-host, Jim Pugliafico is here. Welcome, Jim.
Thanks, and welcome to the podcast, everyone.
And Will Lindis is here too. Welcome, Will.
Hey there, Bears and Man Cubs. Glad to have you back with us.
Thanks, little britches.
Wait, what did you call? Oh, britches. Gotcha.
Britches, not bitches.
I thought you were going straight to the slur. I'm like, what's up, Brad? This early? All right. I got you.
Although I wouldn't put it past me, I'm drinking a giant glass of wine on an empty stomach after a very hard day at work. So who knows? I could be getting there quick.
Ooh.
Could be asleep by the end of the podcast.
Asleep or saucy? Let's find out what Brad's like
Both.
with a little too much red wine in it.
Maybe. Let me just say that I also have the bottle at my desk, so you never know what could happen.
Did I not get the memo? Is this our drunk cast? Is that happening now?
No.
It is for me tonight. Go grab another drink if you need one.
Well, that's okay. I got a beer at hand. We'll make this work.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, we definitely are going to talk about some trailers here. It's our trailer watch segment, something new we're kind of doing. It does count as movie news, but, man, some cool trailers have dropped the last couple weeks that we really haven't gotten to talk about on the show. So, you know what? This is our time. Well, I mean, I guess it's technically your time because you're the one in the car listening to us on the way to work or whatever you're doing. But we're going to talk about them. So the first trailer that I want to talk about, I'm very, very excited about this one. Although the internet is losing its shit over it, and I don't know that I totally understand why.
In a good way or a bad way?
Well, I understand in the good way, but in the bad way, I'm like, really? Really, sci-fi nerds? Like, what
I
is
think
your
so.
deal?
I think I know what's going on.
Yeah. It's one particular element that has the internet ablaze
really?
about this one.
Okay. Well, I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. Because I don't think I'm plugged in on the Star Wars movies as you guys are. I mean, like, with the last movie I watched, the first trailer, and that was it. And that's probably going to be the case with this one, too.
Perhaps.
And I don't, listen to all the fan feedback and comments and everything. I did catch one comment, but we'll talk about it.
Well, before we talk about it
about it.
anymore, why don't you let me introduce the damn thing, and we can get that going. So, of course, as Jim alluded, we were talking about the new Star Wars Rogue One trailer, and, of course, it has a female lead, Felicity Jones. And so we're just going to jump right into it. For some reason, I don't know what's going on with the fanboys, but the fact that it has a female lead, I mean, this should be nothing new, right? We had Rey in Star Wars The Force Awakens, so I don't know why people are going crazy over Felicity Jones in this movie in a bad way. I have read all kinds of comments about, oh, why do we have to have a fucking girl, like, driving the ship? And I'm like, what? How does it even make sense?
You're just doing this because the girl fans have been screaming at you, so you guys buckled. Like,
right.
I don't think that's the case either.
No, it's not. But
there's way more dude fans screaming about this movie in both directions than anyone. I bet 50-1. I'd almost guarantee. But yeah, I mean, we're going to get a movie with a second Star Wars movie in a row with a female main protagonist. It looks like. I don't know, but it definitely looks that way. And I'm totally cool with that. I think the looks of this trailer, I think this movie looks pretty fucking badass.
It does.
Time will tell, and we'll see how it goes. But Brad, I don't want to steal your thunder because you want to talk more about this, but I'll chime in
No, I mean, if you are
I'll go
excited,
back in my corner and growl.
I think it's awesome that you are that excited to talk about it. But yeah, so just a few other things here. I mean, the craziness aside, and honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm a gay man, but I love the fact that we've got a hot chick with a British accent leading this film. I'm excited to see kind of how she does. This movie apparently takes place around the time that the rebellion gets their hands on the plans for the Death Star, shortly before A New Hope, or I'm sorry, as Jim would say, the original Star Wars movie, which is just Star Wars, not Star Wars A New Hope. There's a lot of interesting and cool stuff in this trailer. So obviously we've got Felicity Jones. It was kind of a thrill seeing the Death Star rendered in like modern
I know, because we
day
never see that in Star Wars movies, right?
It was still cool. Come on, Jim. Be excited. Don't be a Darth Downer.
I was being snarky.
I'm gonna let you guys take over. Have at it. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought the trailer was great. I don't know much about the history of the story before A New Hope, but yeah, Brad, as you said, I guess it picks up before the Star Wars movie, and it looks good. I'm looking for them to kind of fill it in, and I'm looking to see what Gareth Edwards, one of my favorite directors now, can do with it before he moves on to his next movie, which we'll talk about later.
What do you think, Will?
Yeah. So I guess kind of going back to the female lead issue, it's not like we didn't have 6 movies in a row that had like male main characters. So even if this one is a shoehorned female protagonist, the ratio is still very, very heavily male to female in terms of main leads. So I have no problem with it whatsoever, as long as it's a compelling character and a compelling role. The trailer looks like that so far. We've got her as sort of at least from what we can tell from the trailer, this, what is it, Jin Aso or something like that, seems to be a very, kind of a more, dare I say it, Han Solo-ish type character. Like, she seems to be a little bit more of like a, wrong side of the law, scoundrelish type character that gets pulled into this, kind of this bigger thing than herself. I think that's really cool. I think it's great to have a female character occupying kind of a male space within the Star Wars universe. The actress looks like she's well fitted within the universe. Some of the scenes that we got to see in the trailer, like the AT-ATs walking around, look really cool. The new actress they got to play Mon Mothma, Brad, is it Mon Mothma?
Mm-hmm. Mon Mothma, yep.
She looks spot on. Like that was ridiculously good. Yeah, I'm on board. I'm on board with this. I think, yeah, sign me up. I will be seeing this one.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the Mon Mothma thing, because one of the things that I kind of had to do a double take on, Will, was I was like, did they CGI her? Like, is that the same actress? I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Return of the Jedi, but I was like, wow, they did such a good job of like CGIing her to look younger. And then I'm like, oh, wait a second, she's a new, different actress. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I thought the same. I saw that and I was just like, oh, cool, digital trickery. And then I saw like, and I didn't even research it past that. I thought that was it, and then like a little bit later, I saw someone post you guys, it's actually an actress, and posted some stuff about it.
Right.
So I would have thought that it was like CGI magic to this day. If someone hadn't told me otherwise. Kudos.
Oh man, yeah, right. It's so cool. And then you also mentioned the AT-ATs, which is something that I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about as well. There's something about seeing those things walking around, like with palm trees and kind of desert, as opposed to like a forest or I don't know, snow. You know what I mean, like ice. They look awesome towering over those palm trees. Like, I'm envisioning AT-AT walkers like attacking Palm Springs now. Like, it's going to be a thing. Like,
wait
the Empire.
Palm Springs, you say?
I do.
Uh-oh. I in case anyone's planning any trips to Palm Springs in the near future, they might want to look out.
We'll be there in a month, so we'll be keeping an eye out for the AT-ATs. But I'm just like, oh my god, the Empire is like coming after the White Party, which is not why we're going to Palm Springs. But anyway, so I thought that was a cool visual. I did really love seeing the Death Star again. Just to circle back to that, rendered in today's technology. I think it was really, really kind of awesome to see, right? Them lowering the like laser dish, whatever you call it, onto the Death Star's main body. Another thing that kind of has me curious, though, is apparently we have a samurai in Star Wars. Is that what that guy is? I'm trying to figure that out.
He had a sword, like a regular sword. Like I'm trying to recall. It wasn't like a lightsaber or anything like that, right?
No.
It was just a regular sword.
I mean, the like Star Wars nerd in me wants to be like, oh my gosh, he has a sword made out of cortosis ore, which blocks lightsabers. But then I realized we didn't see a single Jedi in this trailer, did we?
And there probably wouldn't really be any Jedi if this is right before A New Hope, kind of in the time where like, oh, there's no more Jedi. We may go an entire movie without seeing a lightsaber one.
What? That can't happen.
I'm okay with that.
You know what I would actually love? I would love for Darth Vader to like show up at this movie and like fuck up their shit, and them still getting away. The rebels can still win, but I mean, we can have a new actor playing Darth Vader, right?
Yeah, I mean, because really, it's the voice and it's the costume. We can make that work, and past that too, like. This is the right time to like show how badass the Empire is and how cool Darth Vader is, because we're leading into A New Hope. And I'm glad that if they do go that route, that it's not in the trailer, because as much as we're kind of talking about it and maybe like spoiling ourselves in advance by theorizing, if they don't drop a single clue about it and then he just walks on screen in like the third act.
Oh my god, how amazing would that be?
Frothing at the mouth.
Right? Totally. So I'm pumped. I'm glad that you guys are kind of excited too. Can't wait till December when this movie comes out. But Jim, what's your trailer? What are you excited about this week?
I'm going to talk about guess what? A new Godzilla movie is coming out. We talked about Gareth Edwards, who is the director of Rogue One movie that's coming out, and I'm super excited about that because in 2014 he gave us the last Godzilla movie, the legendary Studios Godzilla movie, and now we're getting another Godzilla movie by Toho, the original studio that brought us Godzilla and brought us like I think on IMDb it says 29 out of the 31 Godzilla movies were produced by Toho. But now we have a new one. They weren't to be outdone by Edwards' movie in 2014, which I personally loved. I know that it's a little bit polarizing. I think most people liked it, but thought maybe it could have been maybe just we could have got more of the monster or whatever, or handled the human story better. But this one's kind of going back to the roots and giving us a kind of where the 2014 was a CGI generated effects and monster. This is kind of a blend of, it goes back to the man in the rubber suit kind of with miniatures concept along with some CGI to enhance that. So I'm really excited. I loved what I saw in the trailer. The trailer has a really different feel to it. Kind of a throwback feel to those old Godzilla movies where there's no dialogue whatsoever. It's just scenes of the monster. You start out with right off the bat we get this giant roar from Godzilla, so we get to see the monster right off the bat. Then there's some scenes of the destruction and people running and some characters that are mouthing dialogue, but you don't get to hear any of that or see any. I'm sure this movie will be in Japanese and will be subtitled. But you don't get to see any of the dialogue. You get to see this giant tail swooping over the city from ground level, exactly like we got in the 2014 movie, if you remember. And I think that's kind of maybe an homage to the other movie a little bit, as opposed to just ripping it off, which I don't think they would do. Because I'm sure Toho has pride in their product, and they want to see they're going to bring Godzilla back to their sensibilities, and I'm excited to have both of them. Because as soon as Gareth Edwards finishes the post-production on Rogue One, he's going to start shooting the next standalone Godzilla movie too. So we're going to get Godzilla movies, I think, kind of back to back. This movie is called, as I said, Godzilla Resurgence, or Shin Gojira in Japanese, and it's got a Japanese release date of end of July 29th, but as of yet, it doesn't have a U.S. date, but it does say it's going to be released in the U.S. At the end of the year, and I'm very excited to see it. I love the look of this monster. It looks to me a lot different than some of the other monsters we've seen. There's something going on. He's definitely scarier. He looks gnarlier than the other Godzillas we've seen out of Toho. This isn't the dancing Godzilla that you got in some of the first couple of movies. His skin looks like it's been irradiated or something, and his arms are totally like turned upward and look like useless like stumps. So there's something, and he's glowing all over his body too, which is different. I don't know. I've talked a while. What do you guys think about this when you saw it?
Yeah, for me, I'm definitely excited about it. Although I have to say, I think I'm a little spoiled. I mean, I love the old Godzilla movies. We've been going through them. They're a lot of fun. But after seeing the Gareth Edwards Godzilla film, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that version of Godzilla looks so amazing. To now get a man in a rubber suit again. I mean, your eye can so immediately tell that it's just a guy like bumbling around in a suit. And I think there's definitely some nostalgia tie-in there in making the decision to do that again, right? They're continuing a good thing that they've had going. But I think for me it's kind of like I kind of prefer the more serious monster look. Although I think they did take some steps, Jim, you called out right. He has sort of this fiery glow under his skin now. He's got this great new pebble tech to his skin. Right. So he definitely looks menacing. The tail mystifies me a little bit. I mean, it's so long that I'm like, like, how does he even lift that thing up? You know what
Brad's
I mean?
a size queen when it comes to Godzilla tails.
Oh,
Is that what you're saying?
I guess. I'm just thinking, like, if you look at the tail, right, there have to be muscles involved to lift a tail and curl it around, and I'm just kind of like, is this tail part prehensile snake or something? Is it like Ka from the Jungle Book, which we'll talk about soon? I don't know, but I do think he looks cool. I'm kind of excited to see some of the Godzilla-isms back, like trucks with, like, the satellite dishes on top shooting missiles at the monster. How many fucking close-ups of like the same stock footage from every movie have we seen in every Toho movie? So I think some of the cool things that fans love and really appreciate from the old movies seem to be present, at least what we've seen so far. So I'm excited. I can't wait to check it out, but I don't like the fact that Japan is getting it before we do. Like, I'm all about my instant gratification. So I want it. I want it at the same time, but probably not going to happen.
Yeah, for me, I'm kind of the opposite mind of you guys in that I'm excited, but for a different reason. I didn't really like the Gareth Edwards one as much. I felt like there were some things that just didn't click for me. And I watched this trailer, and yeah, I see a lot of the nostalgia things, and I see the man in the rubber suit things, but I also see some new innovations, like you said, the kind of the fiery effects through the body look pretty neat for what it was. It looks like we are going to have some human element in as well, although it's hard to tell from the trailer. Like Jim mentioned, there's no dialogue, so we don't know what that human element is going to be. But yeah, sign me up for this one as well. I'm on board for it. I don't have as much of the Toho experience as you guys have, knowing that you guys just finished marathoning every single one of them, and I saw a handful of them, randomly throughout my life. I couldn't even tell you which ones because I think there's a certain point where like, oh wait, who's Godzilla fighting in this one? Some fucking guy in a suit. But yeah, it looks cool. It looks like something I'd be interested in watching. You never know with these. We could end up seeing it and going like, oh man, this is kind of corny. Or we may be watching it, in a couple months and going like, oh yeah, this is corny. It could go. It's going to be corny no matter what. But it could work out really well. It could be positive. I'm happy. I want to see it.
Maybe it'll come out the same week as Rogue One, and we'll have a super epic double feature.
Maybe.
Oh, okay.
Now,
yeah, like we'll double feature anything with Rogue One. That's probably going to be a double-sized episode by itself, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, this Godzilla is definitely, different than what we've seen either from Gareth Edwards movies or from the Toho movies. This guy looks like angrier and meaner, and like something nasty, just happened to him. Another thing, we didn't see any sign of another creature in this trailer, so this is Resurgence. So I think it's kind of almost like a reboot of the Toho Godzilla series
for the 8th time.
Probably the 4th or 5th at least. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm super excited. Want to see a little bit more. This is the trailer I'll probably watch more of. As I don't know, I just don't think I can be super spoiled on a Godzilla movie unless they give away like another monster or something like that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, very cool. Will, what have you got?
Yeah, so this is the movie that I'm going to talk about. I think I saw over the last couple of weeks 3 trailers pretty much dominating my Facebook feed. Definitely Rogue One, to a lesser degree the Toho Godzilla, but I saw quite a bit of it, especially from you two. And the third one being the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, Doctor Strange, which comes out on November 4th of this year. Doctor Strange is a character as he appears in the trailer, at least. He is a doctor. Looks to be a very skilled one. And after some accidents happen, he gets pulled into the world of mysticism. This is that classic story. We've seen it a bunch of times, where a skeptic kind of gets pulled into the world of like fantasy and adventure and stuff like that, and then learns and adapts while he's there. This is looks to be an origin story movie. As we see sometimes with these, or often with these superhero movies. This one being more of a magical focus as opposed to a super soldier serum or alien from Krypton type storyline. But what interests me so much about this one, having known a little bit about the character, not being super well versed with this character, but knowing a little bit, I was really wondering what Benedict Cumberbatch would be like. Because he's a little hit or miss for me. He sometimes plays Cumberbatch, and that works super for some roles, and then for others it doesn't connect as well. And I felt like, at least from what we saw in the trailer, I felt like I liked what I saw from him. I feel like they got a good cast there, and I'm also happy to see some of the supporting characters that popped up here as well. Looks like our villain is going to be played by Mads Mikkelsen. He's the guy that you've probably seen him on Hannibal and a few other like Danish movies. If you have exposure to like Danish movies like me. Mm-hmm. Tilda Swinton is in this, playing the Ancient One. She's in a bald cap and doing mystic stuff. Overall, I thought that some of the effects of like kind of the trippy reality warping stuff looked kind of cool. There's been a little bit of negative buzz about this one, sort of the same feedback that we had from Why Is There a Woman in Rogue One. We got a little bit of why is a white woman playing the Ancient One. So there was definitely some arguments for whitewashing here, and I certainly I don't want to dismiss those arguments, because I think whitewashing is definitely a thing that happens way too prevalently and shouldn't be dismissed. That said, I do kind of love Tilda Swinton in everything I've ever seen her in, and so it's like I don't want to make an exception, but I guess I'm kind of making an exception for Tilda Swinton. I don't know. That's just me though. Jim, what's your thoughts?
Man, I watched this, and I liked what I saw. I do love Benedict Cumberbatch and stuff. This looks like the toned down Benedict Cumberbatch a little bit. You didn't see much. And maybe that's what you like, Will. Maybe he wasn't very Cumberbatchy in this one.
Yes, thank you. That's exactly it, Jim.
Kind of muted, but and that's cool too. I like to see him do pretty much everything. I got a lot of Inception vibes from this. I mean, visually, there were some kind of universe folding over on itself kind of images in this that reminded me of Inception. I know nothing about Doctor Strange. I was just trying to watch earlier, about a minute before the show started. Everything you need to know about Doctor Strange, and there seems to be a lot there. I think it sounds like from like what I've seen from friends on Facebook and stuff that he's a beloved character because he's a little different than your average superhero, right? He's like you said, Will, on the mystical side. I don't know what to expect here. I can't say I'm super excited because I just don't know much about it, and I'm probably a little bit biased in a negative way toward the next quote Marvel superhero movie, unless it's something that I already know and love, like Guardians of the Galaxy. I'll be excited for that when it comes along. But be that as it may, we'll still go watch this one and see how it is. I don't know if I'll want to see more before the movie comes out. When does this one open?
November 4th.
Okay,
yeah, November 4th.
Cool. All right, yeah, definitely a holiday one.
Brad?
If you think you are safe from more Marvel movies, you are not.
Mm-hmm, that's obvious.
Yeah. That was my most awful Benedict Cumberbatch from Star Trek Into Darkness impression. So I love Benedict Cumberbatch. I know what you mean, Will. He does get a little bit Cumberbatchy. Gets a little bit cumbersome with his batchiness. That's what I did there. But I think that he'll do well in this role. I enjoyed watching him in the trailer. I get a little bit of a Sherlock vibe in a way with some of the skepticism. It'll be interesting to see that sort of melt as he meets the Ancient One and gets set on the path of his destiny as Doctor Strange. It's interesting though with the Ancient One. It's not just whitewashing. It's also like gender reversal, right? Because the Ancient One is a man. And, I mean, Tilda Swinton can look kind of manly, but I'm kind of like, interesting that they chose, a white female to play the Ancient One. But I'm interested to see where it goes. I adore Tilda Swinton. She plays kind of like weird and quirky really well. So it'll be interesting to see how she does in this role. I got to tell you, I mean, as superhero origins go, I'm tired of the science-created superheroes. And I say this as someone who is obsessed with the Flash TV show, and science sort of created him, but it's kind of like, oh, there's this serum we made that made him super. Oh, he got exposed to gamma rays, which makes him Hulk out. Oh, he got bit by a radioactive spider. Like, let's do something different, please God. And in this case, it's magic, and I am fascinated by magic. DC has a really cool hero named Zatanna, and I love her character. It is so neat to see how she kind of holds her own with magical powers compared to, Will, you made the reference to like the last son of Krypton, for instance, right?
Right.
So I can't wait to see the Sorcerer Supreme in action. Benedict Cumberbatch, take him for what you will, but I'm hoping he does a good job. As new Marvel movies go, is this Phase 3? Or have we started Phase 4?
Oh, gosh, I think they're wrapping up this phase. I was reading something to where the next we're right at the cusp of a phase change, and I think Civil War might actually be the tipping point, but I could be wrong.
Right. Yeah. Well, either way, I'm whether this is starting a new phase or part of the end of an old phase, I actually am kind of excited to see this as opposed to like another fucking Thor movie. So yeah.
Brad, I get what you mean about like creating, these superhero origin movies, and I think what you're saying is and I don't know, but his powers or whatever are bestowed upon him by like somebody saying, "Poof, you're now mystic," or "Bippity boppity boo," or like what is the like? How does that come about?
We don't want to go into like the spoilers of it, just because we're only talking about the trailer, but. This is a character who gets his powers from magic and whose powers are magic. And so what's refreshing about this, even as someone who's enjoying kind of the science heroes and stuff like that, is this is a refreshing change of pace. This is going to be different tonally than a lot of what we've seen, and also there'll be less limitations. With magic, you can kind of do whatever you want to kind of fit the story, whereas if you've got a character who whose powers are I am super strong and can shoot laser beams out of my eyes, or I have spider powers and can shoot webs. If you have a power set that is very defined, you're limited by that power set. Whereas with magic, they can do whatever the fuck they want, right? So as long as they let loose, and really don't restrain themselves, I think this could be really good. If they go into this and they give him one or two core magical abilities and everything's kind of around that, then it'll feel kind of samey at that.
Right. If the only thing he can do is shoot magical blasts and teleport, I'm gonna be a little let down. You know what I mean? Let's see you whip out some crazy cool spells to I don't know, swap genders of the villains and do fun stuff. It would be interesting.
I mean, the Inception stuff we saw in the trailer, and I know exactly what you're talking about, where the cityscape is kind of wrapped around 3 planes of the screen. That already gives me hope that they're going to,
definitely
cut loose.
Indeed. Well, guys, believe it or not, we're 45 minutes into the show, and we haven't even talked about a movie yet. Are we ready to switch it up?
Let's do it.
Yeah, you're on board, Jim?
Yep.
Wow, you're making weird faces at me. Whatever the fuck. All right.
At you. See, I'm looking into the camera, but I'm only making weird faces at Brad. See, that's how it goes.
Well, I'm the one addressing you in that moment, so it's a natural assumption. But whatever. Here we go, then.
Natural but wrong.
It's my victim complex, right?
Right.
All right. So, guys, before we dive into our discussion of the Jungle Book, just our normal spoiler plate warning. We are going to talk about this movie spoiler-free for probably about 15 minutes or so, which probably means 45 minutes or so. And then we'll give you fair warning before we switch to spoilers. That'll be your chance to duck out for 10 or 15 minutes, come back for plugs. So with that warning out of the way, here we go, our discussion of The Jungle Book. So, Will, with all the knowledge and skills you have, I know you have the bare necessities needed to introduce this movie and give us your initial thoughts. Is it worth checking out in theaters? Would you wait for rental, or do you think you could skip it entirely?
All right. Yeah, so The Jungle Book. So, of course, this is a live-action slash CGI reimagining or retelling of the classic Jungle Book story. As probably most people probably immediately think of the Disney animated feature from the 60s, right? I did not do my research. I don't remember the exact year. So this one's got director John Favreau leading an all-star cast, including actors such as Bill Murray, Ben Kingsley, Idris Elba, Lupita Nyong'o, Scarlett Johansson, Christopher Walken, and more. The story follows this young boy or man cub named Mowgli, who is raised by wolves in the jungle. After a threat from the fierce tiger Shere Khan leads him to flee, he has to meet up with friends such as Bagheera the Panther, the bear Baloo, to discover who he is, what his place in the jungle is, and ultimately figure out which direction he wants to go with his life. For me, this movie was an amazing letdown. This has been, I think, for me personally, kind of the season of disappointing movies, and the kind of hits keep coming with The Jungle Book. Because when we've talked about this trailer a few times on this show, and how excited we were, how much we wanted to watch it, but this movie is really, really hampered by some serious flaws. First and foremost, this is the story of Mowgli, and the kid who plays Mowgli is not a very good actor at all. This is for me at least, this was like Jacob Lloyd, Phantom Menace level bad acting. And and I feel bad, I know that all of the criticism really ruined Jacob Lloyd's life, so I hate to throw the poor thing on Neil Sethi is the actor's name. But man, he's just not very good at all. And he's in every scene of this movie. This is Mowgli's story, and when your lead isn't a good actor, it's really hard to salvage that. You do have some good voice acting performances. I think Ben Kingsley, Idris Elba, and Lupita Nyong'o all do an amazing job. Bill Murray shows up to play Baloo, and when he does, he's very much Bill Murray. The thing is that I felt like up to that point, a lot of the characters felt a little stiff and stoic, and so he was the first character to add like air quotes personality. So even though it was just Bill Murray playing Bill Murray, I still enjoyed the hell out of what he did with Baloo. Less so when Christopher Walken showed up as King Louie. I would say that was the second worst performance of the movie. I can't really blame Christopher Walken for just playing Christopher Walken because that's what he gets his paycheck for these days, but it was ridiculously distracting when he shows up as King Louie. Like, so much so that like it pulled me right out of the film. The CGI animation for the animals looks pretty good. The problem is it looks very, very, in a lot of cases, realistic. Some of the voice acting, especially some of the little small characters like the Pangolas and stuff like that, have a lot of like personality to their tone, even though they're on screen for just a couple minutes. I don't feel like the animation matched the voice acting very well. I thought the animation looked really good. I thought the voice acting was pretty good in a lot of places. I don't feel like they really lined up as much. I felt like I was watching voice dubs over something that was happening on screen. Again, pulls you right out of it. There's also this weird thing where all of a sudden the movie just decides it wants to be a musical out of nowhere when it hadn't been beforehand because of nostalgia, and then all of a sudden it's no longer a musical again. And I thought that was extremely distracting. Overall, like I hear a lot of times, and I've used it myself, the word uneven to describe movies, and a lot of times we use that to describe a film that's like good in parts and bad at parts. This film is really uneven in that I felt like it didn't really know what it wanted to do. I don't feel like any of the elements felt really cohesive, like they were pulled together under one unifying vision. They were all slapped together, put in front of me. I hate to say it, I don't recommend this movie. I did not enjoy this experience at all, and I hate saying that. I don't want to tell anyone to not go see a movie. Maybe this film's for you, but for me, no. But maybe you guys had a better experience, Brad?
Thank God for a differing opinion. So for me, my experience was completely different. And I love that movies can do that. We all come from different walks of life. We have different experiences, different things that we enjoy, different things that we don't. And I love how one experience can be total crap for someone else and be totally amazing for another. I adored this movie. I found myself so engrossed in this film. And it's interesting because for a movie like entirely shot on a soundstage with everything CGI'd in around Mowgli, I didn't think that was necessarily going to be the case. I absolutely loved. Will, I know you talked about how like the animals, you know, they like the animation doesn't look great when they're like talking or whatever. I actually kind of thought it was cool that they sort of focused on like the way mouths move for real animals, and even though they were sort of speaking in human tongue, it didn't look like, oh look, it's another Disney like crap CGI. Like here's an animal talking, moving their lips in ways animals don't really move their lips. Like when the wolves talk, it's not like they're opening their mouth and talking the way that a human would. You can see sort of like the flaps of their like muzzle moving. You can see their tongue kind of moving. But to me, it looked like, granted, you need to use your lips to form words, but it looked more like natural movements of a wolf in its mouth, even though words were coming out, as opposed to over-the-top cheesy animation of a wolf talking in a way that would for me pull me even more out of the movie. I think part of the problem is that this isn't an animated movie, so you can't get away with some of the same things that you do, like you do in the original Jungle Book. Jim's making weird faces. When I say animated movie, I mean hand-drawn animation a la the original Jungle Book, as opposed to CGI animation.
Yeah, and I had to catch myself on that earlier too, Brad, because like you know, there is a difference between animation and this is live action, even though it was it's live action CGI hybrid. I think I could very easily get pulled into the pedantics of it too, but I get where you're you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, it's made to look realistic, obviously, right? Rather than like a hand-drawn cartoon. So we rewatched the original Jungle Book recently, and like if you watch Baloo as he's talking, or King Louie, or Shere Khan, or Bagheera, right? Their mouths very much like the Robin Hood movie, even same character models, right? Their mouths move a very human way. It's very anthropomorphic. Like the furry crowd probably goes crazy watching those cartoons.
Oh God.
I know. I just like hurt your brain probably. But in this case, I don't know. I mean, something about the pseudo-realistic qualities of the animals with the voices coming out worked for me in a way that didn't seem as cheesy as like a cartoon animated talking animal does. I totally agree with you that Neil Sethi, I mean, there were several moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Anakin Skywalker asking if Padme is an angel, like all over again. I'm like, oh, Jesus, really, kid? Like, come on. But for me, even though this movie has Mowgli at its center, this movie is all about the animals of the jungle. Like, I could almost kind of give a shit about Mowgli. For me, it was seeing this world fleshed out. It was seeing how these animals interact together. I don't want to go into spoilers, but seeing the dynamics of the wolf pack, for instance. Seeing the dynamics of, like, the animals coming together during certain parts of the film. Oh my God, the voice acting in this film is fucking incredible. Idris Elba is Shere Khan. Holy crap, guys, I feel the wine kicking in. Sorry if I'm getting a little overzealous.
You're okay,
but
Brad.
Man, he was so good as Shere Khan. Like, sometimes he would say things, and I would just feel a shiver down my spine. It was like Ed, the crazy hyena, like shivering when, Scar would say Mufasa in The Lion King.
Say it again.
Mufasa. But Ben Kingsley is Bagheera. I mean, I get a little Ben Kingsley'd out, to be totally honest with you, but I kind of forgot it was Ben Kingsley. Like, I was like, oh, it's a British Panther. Okay, I'm on board with this. Well, I mean, it takes place in India. India was controlled by the British Empire at one point. I buy that there's a British Panther. Lupita Nyong'o, holy crap, as Raksha, the wolf mother who raised Mowgli. I'm tearing up already. Like, I thought her performance was fantastic. Christopher Walken was Christopher Walken, yes. I think for me, that was probably the weakest part of the movie. But man, I mean, I could go on and on. Bill Murray, yeah, he's Bill Murray, but I think with a character like Baloo, I mean, it just fits. I loved the Baloo scenes so much. And yes, of course, there are some musical numbers. I actually didn't expect that. I thought the limit we were going to get was maybe like the whistling we saw in the trailer. I won't say any more. So I was kind of surprised by that too. But it kind of worked for me in some respect. So the other call out that I just want to make real quick before we pass it on to Jim, who's been so patiently waiting, is Scarlett Johansson as Kaa. Kaa was one of my least favorite characters in the original Jungle Book. I kind of detested Kaa. I thought he was stupid. Ooh, a hypnotic snake, whatever. But Kaa was easily one of my favorite characters from this version of the Jungle Book, and a lot of that is due to Scarlett Johansson and just how like leading the wolf to slaughter, like her voice is in this film. I think she plays this oily, sneaky snake so well, and man, there's lots of other things I want to talk about, but I'm going to save it for spoilers. Jim, what was your thought?
Yeah, I'm somewhere between really liked and loved this movie. Jungle Book is probably, and maybe there's a nostalgia factor, but we'll get into some of that. And both of you had really good points, and I want to elaborate on my thoughts on some of those things too. But Jungle Book being like one of the first childhood memories I have in a movie theater was my uncle, my mother's brother, taking me. It was probably one of these, here, take your nephew out to the movies, taking me to see the Jungle Book. And I I've always loved the Jungle Book movie. And Brad said we rewatched it, the original movie from 1967. There's been several Jungle Book movies. We went back and watched it, and there were several parts of it that, while they were familiar and nostalgic, they're definitely dated. They came across as dated. But the general story I really loved. Some of the characters I fell in love with. I've got a few quibbles with this movie too, but I did love what John Favreau and the writer Justin Marks did with kind of adapting this classic story from the original Disney animation to here. I think they went through and picked out some of the scenes that they thought could work in their format, which was the CGI animated to look like live action movie. It's difficult when we talk about this, is it live action? Yeah, it does have one live character in it, but the rest of it is all animated, CGI animated. I mean, this movie could get nominated for Best Animated Feature at the end of the year, and that would be kind of crazy if you think about it. But yeah, I loved it. We'll get into more of the parts that they took out of the original and how they adapted it for a modern audience in this movie, because I think some of it was really great the way they did it. I liked most of the voice acting. I agree with you guys on what was his name, Neil Sethi, the child actor here. This kid seemed like he stepped right out of like central casting, like as the most talented kid, talented and precocious kid they could find. That kind of fit the Mowgli role, and I didn't get any natural vibe out of this kid at all, and it's too bad. But it is, as you said, Brad. I think this movie, if you focus more on the animal characters, and yes, Mowgli does drive the plot, but I see him as a kind of a vehicle for this movie. And you're right. I think the movie is more about the universe that's created and the animals within that universe and how they play in. At least that's the way I saw it. We could talk about celebrity voice acting. I think there's some stunt casting going on here for name recognition, and I think that might have hurt the movie a little bit. Granted, Bill Murray makes a decent Baloo. I don't really have a complaint there, but it's obviously it's obvious when Baloo talks that it's Bill Murray, and I see and hear Bill Murray when I watch Baloo. Same thing with King Louie. I hear Christopher Walken, and that kind of took me out of the movie a little bit. I don't know what to say. There were some oddly muted emotional beats in this movie, or places where I normally would be emotional that I wasn't, and I don't know if that's intentionally done that way. I mean, there were some pretty dark scenes in this movie and some places where they could have played up the emotion, but they didn't, or either that or it just didn't work on me, maybe like it worked on others. We'll talk about the musical numbers that they tried to put in this movie. Will, I kind of agree with both of you guys. This movie couldn't really decide whether it really wanted to commit to the musical numbers or not commit to the musical numbers, and it ended up in a weird place in between, where it almost would have been better if they just had a few maybe motifs throughout the movie that led you to those melodies, those familiar melodies in those specific scenes. I think that would have been great, and then save the full. Well, we'll talk about the. I don't want to spoil anything that might come later, but all I'd say is I'm definitely going to recommend this movie. I think this movie is a great movie for families. Anybody who's seen and liked the first Jungle Book. There's two sides to the argument about the talking realistic animals. If you guys remember back to, I never liked movies that have animals that look like real animals that talk. Something about it has always bugged me, whether it's Garfield or, I mean, you name it. And this movie had the same problem. Even though it might have been done a little bit better, it's still kind of odd to see animals actually talking. But when it comes to like drawn animals that talk, I'm totally fine with that. And people, if you remember back to when we talked about The Good Dinosaur, people really railed on that movie because, it's got cartoony-looking dinosaurs against a very realistic background. And there's a reason why they use cartoon characters to voice dialogue and bring emotion out, because I just think that talking realistic animals is that uncanny valley that we can't cross. And I think we're fine with cartoony animals that talk and show emotion, but when real animals do it, it just feels weird. And I think this movie suffered from a little bit of that too. But overall, I would recommend this movie. I'm looking forward to talking more about spoilers and stuff with you guys.
Yeah, it's. Oh, go ahead, Brad.
No, please go for it.
I was going to say, yeah, so that becomes the artistic challenge that they have to face. Like, and I think with any film that includes any type of CGI or hand-drawn animation or whatever, and it's like it's figuring out what stylistic choices best work for the story. And I was one of those people who had a problem with the Good Dinosaurs cartoony characters, not because they were cartoony, but because the backdrop was so discordant with the characters themselves. And I feel like they kind of tried to do both things. And I feel like here, the problem I had was that they committed to the live-action choice, and because of that, you couldn't have overly animated features because then it wouldn't look right. I almost feel like this was a film that I don't know what they could have done differently. I'm not the animator. That's not my job. I feel like they committed to the choice. They went for it, and I think at the end of the day, for me at least, it just didn't work. But that said, there were some characters in this movie that did work, and I don't know what it is about them that was so much different. There was one spot where Baloo is doing something and 3 characters show up. I won't say anything more about it because of spoilers, but 3 small characters show up and just kind of talk in the background, and I thought they were all very well animated, interesting. The voice acting kind of met. There was a lot of personality dripped into them, and I think that's maybe what I was missing. I think the characters looked so realistic that I think that they lost a little bit of the personality that I felt the strong voice acting was bringing to the table. So just a little bit more something could have really brought out and matched those voice performances. And that would have, I think, for me, the Mowgli performance overshadowed everything. I think that's what could have maybe turned me to your camp, so I could kind of disregard him if I was more invested in the other characters.
Yeah. I agree, and again, I won't talk more about the Good Dinosaur, but there is a reason why they made that choice, and like I said, I don't think realistic-looking animals, or can you imagine how a realistic-looking dinosaur, like in Jurassic Park, would look ridiculous if it was like talking to people? It just, I don't know, it just doesn't. There's something about that visual that kind of goes against our sensibility, but we have no problem when it's a cartoony-looking character doing the same thing, and that's the choice here. But you're right. I think some of it worked. I think the Shere Khan portion of it worked really well for me. The wolves, not so much, because it was kind of reminiscent of those talking dog movies. And I can't think of one.
Homeward Bound.
Yeah, you know those kind of films.
Or like a bad Super Bowl commercial, where like random animals talking.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, but again, that's, to me, that was a minor point. I did like the way they adapted this one to the screen. I figured they would have a little bit of an issue with talking animals, but it's even worse when they're singing.
Brad, who's your favorite character?
Oh my goodness. I would say I really loved Idris Elba as Shere Khan. Probably the best part of the movie for me. Although that hurts my heart to say, because I fucking love Lupita Nyong'o as Raksha too, and it's a hard choice for me. But I guess Shere Khan, Idris Elba, edges her out for the win.
Claw to your head, Jim. Who do you pick?
Yeah, same with me. Even though he was trying to channel Benedict Cumberbatch a little bit, I loved Idris Elba as Shere Khan. I mean, I got the sense that this guy, was a villain, and he was just bad news, and just his menacing tone in some of those scenes, and we'll talk about some of them in spoilers. There's one in about the middle of the movie where he's addressing some of the animals, and I don't know. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a cool little scene.
Yeah, I would say for me, I'm in the same boat. Like, I think Shere Khan was the best blend of. I think Idris Elba's voice acting was the strongest in the film. I think that the fact that the character was designed to be so menacing. So you have a lot of shots where you're looking up at him, or you're kind of zooming in on his face, or there's shadows, like, because you've got a menacing character, and that's the type of thing you do. I think that added a lot of extra personality to the animation on screen too. I think Shere Khan was the most fully actualized character in the movie. So it looks like it's a three-peat for us.
So I think this is a good place to move into spoilers, because I want to talk about something there. So we're going to go into our spoiler section. If you're not okay with spoilers, sorry, come back in 15 minutes and catch us for plugs. Sorry, not sorry. But here we go. Spoilers, officially fair game, blah, 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 whatever. So I kind of want to go back to something we were talking about in terms of, like, the animals and mismatching the voice and all that stuff, right? So one of the things that I really liked about Shere Khan especially, and what they did with him, is that there are times... Okay, here's a good example. So he shows up at the wolf pack, right? And he hasn't killed Aquila yet. Spoiler! Oh my god! Oh. He hasn't killed Aquila yet. He just comes up to the top of the rock, right? And he's sort of coming up, and he's a little menacing. And, like, what does he do? He fucking, like, lays down like a cat, starts, like, grooming himself a little bit. He looks up at Aquila. He's, like, having this conversation with Aquila. And, like, if this were, like, an animated Disney movie from, like, a hand-drawn perspective, like, they're just two, like, animal heads, like, talking to each other. But I really loved the blend of, like, realistic sort of animal behavior while they're also having a conversation. In fact, like, when we got home that night, like, I'm watching our cats and their body language, and obviously they're not talking to each other in human voices, right? But I'm just, like, imagining them having a conversation near the food dish while one is laying there waiting for the other one to, like, eat and get out of the way. So I really loved how that sort of worked together. But then in other cases, you're right, it doesn't always work that well, right? I think they made very deliberate choices with Shere Khan to kind of flesh him out, whereas, for instance, Bagheera sometimes. Bagheera's just there walking around, like, being the voice of reason, right? But how often do we see, like, Bagheera really being a cat? Like, oh, Bagheera's up a tree. Okay, cool. But, like, do we see him, like, kneading the ground and, like, stretching his claws, or, you know? So it's like, why put all that in for Shere Khan and not your other main cat character? It can be a little bit distracting. It creates a little bit of a disconnect, I think.
Especially when Bagheera is such a important character in the story. I mean, he is sort of the... If you look at Mowgli as a character who is being controlled by kind of two competing forces, you know, you have the, kind of the wiser character of Bagheera and the more impulsive character of Baloo being the two that kind of help mirror the two aspects of Mowgli's personality. Bagheera is extremely well voice acted. I really liked Kingsley's voice acting here, but just the kind of the finished product of the character on screen was kind of boring and forgettable by comparison to some of the others, because he didn't have those moments. Sometimes you saw him walking in a tree, or sometimes you saw his eyes reflect, and I thought that's kind of neat. But just as a character, I was missing some of those, like, little quirks, like those little things that make someone a character. You know, it could be something as simple, like, if in a real life movie, someone who, like, fiddles quite a bit, or, like, pulls on their ear, like, you know, just has a particular way of expressing themselves. I didn't get any of those with Bagheera. I got a neat-looking animated cat with Ben Kingsley's voice. So I think Bagheera was probably, when I say that I had a problem with the animal characters in this film, I'm actually most specifically talking about Bagheera.
Yeah, shade thrown at Bagheera.
Shade thrown. Get in the shade tree, Bagheera.
And I think so. I think I know what happened with the Bagheera character in this movie, and it's the same. And Favreau is trying to be faithful to the original movie, and I think for the most part he is. And I want to talk about some of the main differences that I noticed. But Bagheera was not one of those differences. He treated Bagheera in this movie exactly the same way that Disney treated him in the original movie. He was a come and go character off the screen for a lot of the action in a way, and also we didn't really. Never really come to know how he became associated really with Bagheera, or how Mowgli and Bagheera became closely associated, since he was brought up by wolves. What's a cat doing around, watching out for him? Is he just the cat that hangs around and runs errands for them. I don't know, but I think it was done because it was the way it was done in the first movie, and maybe they just didn't feel like mucking around with that part of the story. But the parts they did muck around with, I really liked. If you remember, one of them I'm going to call out is the elephants. In the first movie, there's a whole scene of the elephants on parade or something like that, like an elephant brigade, and they do a song, and the baby elephant talks to Mowgli, and while it's kind of cute, it's very dated, and if they had tried to do that in this movie, I think it would have been really silly. Instead, they have the elephants come through. You bow to the elephants, which I thought was really cool, and how the elephants kind of created these pathways through the forest, and you just get a little wink from the baby elephant, right? I don't think the baby elephant actually talks in this movie like it does in the original movie. And then later on, we get a nice elephant scene where Mowgli actually comes into play and rescues the baby elephant and gains the trust of the elephant. And I like that they put that stuff in there. The other things that they changed is they got rid of that crazy lame ending of the first movie.
Oh my God, bedroom eyes girl.
Yeah. The girl from the village comes out to fetch water from the river, and there's Mowgli. He's going to the man village, and he has to make a choice based on the come hither look that she gives him, and he decides to go. Spoilers for the original Jungle Book. He decides to go to the man village, and here we get a much more compelling ending, I think, to the story. We get the big showdown between Bagheera and Mowgli, which I thought was really well done from an action standpoint. So I kind of love some of the choices that they made. I wish they had left the two more of the songs out, which we talked about.
Do you think it's a double standard that they kept Bare Necessities and they kept the fucking King Louis song, but the Scarlett Johansson Trust in Me song was moved to the credits?
I would imagine that there was probably an original treatment that involved her singing that and it being part of it, and they started looking at where to cut things for time, etc. And because that, if you really think about the cost scene, it is very abrupt. Jim, you mentioned something about the elephants, and kind of circling back to that, I think it was a wise decision to cut the song because it's dated and it's cheesy. And so you go through this entire movie without any songs up until Baloo appears at, almost the halfway point, right? Like, pretty deep into this film.
Yeah.
And then you get a scene, honestly, when you get Bare Necessities in this movie, they're floating in the water and they're kind of singing it, but it's not a full-on musical number. So I didn't think of this movie as a musical at that point.
No.
That was just...
It's talk singing. It was talk singing.
Right. Right.
It felt organic, but then the King Louis song we cut the elephants for cheesiness. The King Louis song totally needed to be cut. That song came out of nowhere for me. Like, all of a sudden, I was like, "This is a musical," and it felt like if I were in the middle of watching 12 Years a Slave, and then just all of a sudden at the 2/3 mark, we get a Backstreet Boys video just cause. That's what this felt like to me. It was so out of place with the rest of the movie that it was sin number 2. Mowgli's acting is number 1. King Louis song number 2.
Somehow they felt they had to make this King Louis scene a lot more threatening than the original one. Yes, the monkeys did kidnap Mowgli in the first movie, as they did here, brought him to the temple to King Louis. But King Louis was much more upbeat, crazy. Hey man, you got to give me the man's red flower, blah blah blah, And in this movie, he's downright threatening. You know what I mean? And it just felt really weird. Although I did love the cowbell reference. Did you guys get that? Christopher Walken is the original more cowbell guy, and Mowgli finds a cowbell in his temple, which I thought was kind of cool.
Oh my God, Will, you and I just had the exact same thought. Holy crap!
What? Dirty minds think alike.
So my first thought is man's red flower. That totally sounds like a gaping vagina. And my second thought is that Mowgli sounds an awful lot like Mobley. and I'm wondering if you can find man's red flower.
Did I say
on
Mowgli? No, I didn't.
No, you didn't. You didn't. But Will and I had the same thought at the same fucking time.
Wow.
That was awesome.
And I'll be honest. I make some pretty lowbrow jokes here. Making that reference there, I feel like is a personal low for me. Like I need to go take like a Silkwood shower after this podcast.
Go to church.
I shouldn't have gone there. I shouldn't.
Silkwood, is that a lube?
Brad, we're gonna talk off air about what is and is not a sexual reference.
Oh, okay, all right. Gotcha.
Spoilers. I guess it all is.
So I want to ask you guys: do you think Mowgli is a fucking like unaware dick for like burning down the goddamn forest because he's a petulant little twat who thinks the world revolves around him? Or do you think he is a well-meaning, good-hearted, wonderful boy who's there to save his family and friends? What's your thought process?
I think the latter. I think the burning of the forest was kind of a what do you call it? A lesson, I guess. It's a cautionary tale about that. Although I don't know, man. Fire is not a man's creation. I don't know where the hell that idea came from to put it in the original movie and in this movie.
Prometheus brings us fire. Like that's
well, maybe mythologically, but naturally.
Harnessing fire.
To be fair, the animals have probably seen man using fire more than they've seen lightning create fire. Like that man village is not really that far from their jungle, right? And you can see they're always watching those men around bonfires and lighted torches. So I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. They might think it comes from man to some degree.
Did it seem like through the course of the movie it took them a few days to get to the man village from the wolves?
And it took them seconds to get back.
It took him seconds to go back and get the fire and come back to the battle?
Yeah, he did that. They go on that long journey to get to the edge of the man village, and then he runs down there, which when they're on the ledge looks far away. He runs down there, gets the fire, and runs back long enough to still have a lit torch. Like, those don't last forever. I think that, Brad, you asked the question, is he a reckless fool or is he like a well-meaning child? And I think the answer is he's kind of both. Like, I think that's the point of that sequence there is like, he was playing with fire and are you going to get burned? No, the whole forest is. I think my problem with it was that it felt like the consequences were too abrupt, and then they were too quickly healed over there in the end. Because that end sequence, I think, could have been stronger for me if it wasn't for he shows up, everyone hates him because he has fire, and he instantly burned down the entire forest and running, and then like a couple seconds later, like Shere Khan shows up, and they're like, "Nope, actually, it's okay that Mowgli burned down the entire forest." I felt like it was way too rushed. Like, I don't get why the characters were so angry and then so unangry at Mowgli so quickly. It felt like it robbed the consequences of the lesson that he was supposed to learn.
Well, to be fair, he didn't burn down the whole forest. He only burned down part of it, and the elephants were able to use their mighty creationist tusks to reform the forest and allow the river to flood out the fire. Of course, who knows how many mice died in their holes trying to go underground and get away from the fire, and so they got flooded out. I don't know. There was plenty of jungle left. It wasn't the whole jungle.
Sure,
Besides, a little deforestation helps out once in a while. It's Mother Nature's friend.
Well, they kind of, and I think that was kind of the problem I had with the blocking of the end, because if it was once he uses the elephants to fix everything that everyone turns and gets back on his side, I would be cool. I guess I would have been more cool with that. But really, it was like everyone was afraid of him. And before he fixes everything, Shere Khan shows up, and then everyone says, "But we're a pack now." And I felt that turnaround, like everyone did a 180 and then another 180, all in the span of about 2 minutes of the film. And I think that was too abrupt for consequences to happen for me. Like, I didn't have enough time to really feel like, oh man, Mowgli's friends don't care for him anymore, before it's like, oh man, they're rallying behind him. They could have done something different, maybe space that out a little bit more. I don't know. Just
yeah, I think it was just showing the swing of power, because all along Shere Khan is giving all the animals his reason why Mowgli has to go. Right? He's a man. They start fires. They destroy everything, and here we are in what century we're in, and we're hunting tigers to near extinction, of course, or putting them in petting zoos where people can go and pet on tigers that are afraid to get beaten if they act out. But he's the bad guy, right? Because he's saying Mowgli has to go, and we've got to squash this threat. That was his thing. And then at the end, they had to show the swing of power to say, hey, maybe Shere Khan is right. Maybe man is a big threat to the forest, and they did that by showing the forest fire. I was fine with that. Maybe I didn't notice the animals themselves swinging against Mowgli, because at that point the battle was full on raging, right, between Shere Khan and Mowgli in the tree. So yeah, I thought the ending was way better than the original movie's ending, at least.
All right. Well, guys, we need to look at wrapping up. So how do we feel about moving on to some pluggage?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is the part of the show where we recommend cool things for you to check out. Jim, what you got?
I have a movie that was released last year called 99 Homes with Andrew Garfield and Michael Shannon. Really, really good character study about two guys kind of caught up in opposite ends of the housing crash in the 90s, but from a very practical standpoint and a very localized standpoint, I think, in Florida. This one was directed by Ramin Barani, who directed mostly, I think, shorts up to this point, and does a really good job with this movie. If you want to see a different side of Michael Shannon acting other than fucking Zod, or what you get in Midnight Special or Mud, the movies that we talked about, Midnight Special, I think a week or two ago. Check this movie out. Michael Shannon is amazing. I mean, he just chews up scenes left and right. Andrew Garfield is really good here too, as a kind of down on his luck family man who, is just trying to hang on to his house. This movie's called 99 Homes, and it's available now I found it on iTunes for rent, but for a few bucks. But check it out. It was one of the better indie movies of last year.
Awesome. Will, what you got?
So I'm going to plug something I've plugged before, but it's timely. There is a movie that I've talked about countless times on this show. I saw it twice at Fantastic Fest last year. It's one of only 2 films I've ever done multiple times in the same film festival. And it's a movie called Green Room. And the reason I'm talking about it now is it is now out in limited release, and it is slowly expanding to more and more theaters over the next few weeks. Currently sits at my favorite film of the year, of 2016, since it's a 2016 release. Really cool talk thriller about a punk band that's forced to fight against a bunch of skinheads. Directed by Jeremy Saulnier, the guy that did Blue Ruin and Murder Party. It has not necessarily an all-star cast at all, but it does have Patrick Stewart in kind of an interesting role. This is the type of movie, not everyone likes violent thrillers, but if you do, God, this one is so good. So now I've been talking about it for a while. Now you have an opportunity to start scouring theaters near you, and then in the next week or 2, it should be available in your area. I highly recommend Green Room.
Awesome.
Yeah, not quite yet. I think it opens really wide, at the end of this month.
Yeah, I think so. I think it started in limited release on the 15th, but that was, just a few core cities. It's not got a huge following yet, but but it is expanding. I hope you guys get a chance to see it soon. I want to talk to you about it so much. So much.
Awesome.
On my list.
Very good. Excellent. Awesome. Well, I have 2 things I want to plug real quick. We saw a great film at South by called Sing Street, and it has started what?
South by.
I know, whatever. South by Southwest.
It's the wine talking.
It is the wine. I've had 3 half glasses, so it is the wine. But Sing Street was a film that we saw at South by Southwest that we really, really loved. It is starting to come out here in the United States. It may be available in your area. May not be. Keep an eye out for it. But it has a phenomenal soundtrack, and it is available now on the iTunes Store and on Amazon, etc., etc. I've been having a lot of fun going back and re-listening to a lot of the original songs for that film, which I don't know. They did a really great job with it, so that's really cool. And then the other thing is I want to give a shout-out. I know it's TV-related, but I feel like I made a movie-related plug, so it's all good. If you watched our episode where we talked to the guys from the Power of Grayskull documentary, the new He-Man documentary that was recently funded through Kickstarter, I mentioned a company called Blast Replicas, which made my really awesome like He-Man sort of power replica. I recently received my Thundercats Sword of Omens replica from them, and they do custom-made stuff. Is this thing like not the coolest like 80s kid thing ever? Like you can't see it in listener land unless you're watching live or on video. But Will, you were a Thundercats fan. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that looks awesome. What's it? I mean, if you don't mind, like, what's it made of? Like,
well, it's got rebar inside so that the two pieces don't come apart.
But it's made too.
Yeah, it gives it a lot of heft, but it's made from really durable, I think, like polyurethane, like plastic. It's not metal at all. I mean, it's totally like very heavy duty, like super sturdy plastic.
I know the type of plastic you're talking about, and like I had a little toy sword. It didn't look near as cool as that, but made of that stuff. And seriously, like that thing would like leave bruises when you accidentally missed like sword fighting with your friends as a kid. So yeah, that thing looks like it would hurt.
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally. It's even got like a pointed tip. I'm like pointing my tip at the camera for perspective.
Too much wine, Brad.
I know. But I can't tell you the amount of times I picked it off my desk and been like, Sword of Omens, give me sight beyond sight. I'm such an 80s geek. But anyway, Blast Replicas, guys. If you love cartoons from the 80s and video games and all kinds of cool stuff like that, go check out their website. Just do a Google search for Blast Replicas. The guy behind it, Josh Hendershot, does some amazing work. So if you like my Sword of Omens or the He-Man sword, definitely check into maybe getting one of your own made, because tell you what, if you're a collector, if you love TV, if you love movies, man, he makes the best props around. So I almost feel bad for giving him a plug while I'm tipsy and not articulating myself very well.
No, you're actually articulating yourself very well. I thought this was a very organic plug. It's not a paid spot at all, but it almost sounds like it could be. You did a good job, Brad.
Oh, good. Well, that's good. I appreciate that. All right. Well, guys, I think that wraps us up for this week. Next week, oh my God, I don't know what we're talking about. Green Room isn't in wide release yet. Neither is Sing Street. So, are we really talking about the new like Snow White Huntsman movie?
Maybe.
I don't know. Maybe
we'll come up with a special episode.
Maybe we'll revisit some older movies in lieu of something great coming out that's new. But take it easy, folks. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.